Hello, and thank you for joining me today for today's 2025 R1 release webinar. My name is Steve Tompkins. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect with Criterion, and we're excited to show you our updates that are in the 2025 release. Just want to point out the release plan here before we get into what is in the release. So here you can see, of course, the webinar is today, and so we're doing this right now. And then on Monday, the software will be available for everybody. The servers will be updated, and you'll be able to enjoy all these new features out there. So let's go ahead and get started. Go into my browser here, where you'll be able to see the software. So give me 1 second to switch this around, and all right, so here we are in 2025 R1, and I want to go over the schedule or the agenda real quick of what we're going to cover. I'll go into the detail of these things as we get to each thing here, but first thing we're going to talk about are a number of enhancements to scheduling, and then we're going to go into some of the enhancements that are in self-service. We'll talk about our mobile app changes, our mobile app 2.0 changes, and then recruiting. And last, but certainly not least, because there are a number of things, human resources. So we want you to hopefully stick around all the way to the end, keep you engaged with all the great new features that are out there. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a chat feature. So if you would like to chat with our panelists, or if you have any questions that our team can try to answer for you during the webinar, we do have a Q&A. Please feel free to use those and let us know if there's anything that any questions that you have. We'll try to answer those as we go through it. So let's talk about scheduling here. So we have a very big enhancement to our scheduling in the system here. And you'll see here, what I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about being able to add the timesheet layout to shift groups, additional shift requirements for things like job positions, skills, certifications, down to the shift detail, improve project and task selection for shifts and shift groups, a setting to the shifts to make them active, and that will also apply to the assignments and whether or not they are active going forward. And then when somebody actually clocks in, automatically applying their schedule to their clock in, and then some fantastic enhancements to the shift assignment summary screen, as well as a brand new shift assignment view that will be available. So let's get right into that. And we're going to start off here in shift groups here. So if you've ever looked at the scheduling before, this is nothing new, the shift groups. This is where you kind of set up the schedule, the basics of the schedule and things like that. So this view in and of itself is not brand new. One thing is that you can, go by location here, but let's go into one of these. I'm going to go into this one called customer service just to give you an idea. And this again may look familiar, except for now you'll see we have a timesheet layout drop down available right here. You may also notice that project and task are right here, and that is because I chose this timesheet layout. Now, if I don't choose a timesheet layout, there's actually more fields that are possible there, sub-project and subtask, but this layout has just project and task. So that's why I see those there. And of course, if you have several different layouts, you may want to have different schedules to reflect that. And they, of course, may have different things right there. So you'll see I could say this is for a certain project and or task if I wanted to do that there. So very simple to set that up there. Also, we have an enhanced setting here that's now available. And you'll see here, this actually is going to apply to what I mentioned is when somebody clocks in, do you want it to default to whatever their project and task is assigned for that particular day? So we have this setting here. This is by default anytime during the shift. So as an example, you may see here, I've got 8 to 12. If I clock in during 8 to 12, take whatever the project and task settings are for that particular shift and make that my default. It doesn't mean I can't change it, but it makes it the default. So it makes it easier for the employees to know what they should be doing. I can tell it not to populate the timesheet if I don't want it to. Maybe it's their choice, or they they aren't locked to a certain project and task, and they can just select from a number of things. So you can do that there. And then you'll see here, if you would like it so that the employee cannot override that, they must take what's on the shift. We have that setting right here. Do not allow override. So the employee would not be able to change that. All right, so that is the new enhanced settings here in this. And so I'll go and just cancel that there. The shift requirements, now this is not new where we have shift requirements, but this is for the entire group. So I could say, maybe this is, as you can see, maybe it's just for customer service. So I might specify the customer service rep position, or maybe there's different positions. I'd like to do that. I don't have any set up here, but I could. And this would be for every shift down here at the bottom. But now we have it. So once you add a shift, you can actually set the requirements for the shift. So not the group, but the actual individual shift. So I could say for this morning one, here's the project and task for everybody who's in there, and here are the requirements. And then we have this option right here to include the requirements from the shift group. Or if we uncheck this, it will only use these requirements and it'll ignore the requirements from the shift group. So you could set that on an individual shift if you need to do that there. All right, and then you'll see, of course, I have these things scheduled out here. This is what it looks like when I go to schedule or set up the schedule for people. All right, so we also have this checkbox right here to make this shift group active or not. Now, I'm going to keep this one active because I'm going to be using that, but you'll see here, when I have that flag, I can show inactive ones, maybe old ones that I no longer am using before. So this helps to clean up this shift group screen. And if I make one inactive, there's a pop-up that lets me know that these shift assignments are now out here. They're using that inactive group. And obviously these are from several years ago, so not a problem. But what if I had one in the future? I probably want to know about that. So it'll show you that maybe I had some in May and I can, see what I need to do. Maybe I need to reassign people or something like that. All right, and if I need to make it reactive, of course, I can come in here and hit the toggle and reactivate it. Very simple. So that is the changes here in the shift groups in there so that you can, have a lot more flexibility in how that works there. Let's look at the assignments of the employees. So again, I have a couple of things here. This is cleaned up again, where we've done this. First off, you can now look by shift group. Instead of typing it in, I can select from a drop-down menu and see that right there. This is also showing only the ones that are including today and forward by default. I can go back and look at older ones. So if I need to see something from last week or last year or 10 years ago, whatever, I could do that. But by default, I'm only going to see the ones that are from today forward. So it makes it very nice and easy to look at that information there. And I'll go ahead and just click into this so you can see I have some folks scheduled here. This is the traditional view that we had for our scheduling. And this is great for seeing this laid out this way. And you'll notice here, I can click into somebody and I can change the times. I can also override the project and task information for an individual time frame if I need to. So for Lauren, if I needed her to do a certain task or something like that, I could go in there and change that just for 8 to 12. So that's how that would work there. Of course, maybe it's not overridden for the afternoon. And this notes things this would show on her schedule view. I'll get to that when we get to self-service. All right, so that's scheduling here. Now, this is a good way to look at this information. You'll see I can do things like I can copy and rotate, but this is the new view that we have available. We're calling this our shift assignment view. So this is by shift group. And you'll notice, okay, this is the one for this week. I can go back to a previous week if I need to. And it tells me, of course, this is last week's shift scheduling. And of course, if I want to go forward to next week, I can see that. But now you'll notice how each person is a little box on here and I can see this information there. And it's telling me if there's any requirements on here. So maybe I needed 3 people and there's only 2 or something. I'd be able to see that out there. I don't have any, but if I did, I'd be able to see that information there. And it's giving me some nice totals here, how many shifts are scheduled, the total hours. And you'll notice even up here at the top, 3 employees are scheduled with the total. And down here at the bottom, daily totals. So it gives you a nice view of the scheduling on here. And again, I can click on this and now get to that same view to be able to add or change these things out here. If I need to add something to a specific day, maybe on Monday, I need to add somebody. Now I have this screen here. This gives me a lot more options for searching for employees. So you'll see all these fields up here that I can use to match up. If I'm looking for somebody with a certain skill or something, I can type those things in here, and then it will show me the results. Here's a checkbox to use the shift requirements. So these people in red, they cannot be scheduled because they don't meet the requirements, but I can choose to override that. Maybe I say, you know what, I don't want to see it. Maybe I still want my customer service people. So I, search for this way, and then I say I'm going to have Dora scheduled on that day, and then she'll be added to my schedule. So here's Dora. All right. So very easy to do that right there. I can also, you'll see here, hit plus, and this would assign somebody for all the days on the schedule. So both daily and weekly and daily scheduling on there. So I can see this. And then, there's other views on here. You'll see here, I could choose to look at it by groups of employees. So if I had a group of maybe a certain job title or department or something, I can use this to look at it by groups. So like I said, a fantastic view of the scheduling that gives you a more visual view of that. So that is all of the changes in here. Now, I will mention we are going to have a webinar on this, our Criterion Learning Series webinar on this in 2 weeks. So if you're interested in this, I'll go into a lot more detail, spend about 30 minutes on it versus the 5 or so that I was able to spend right here. But that is our enhancements so far in this. I'm going to talk about self-service options in here too. So we're going to go ahead and throw up a poll here to get your thoughts on the scheduling. All right, thank you for your thoughts on that. All right, I actually just saw a message. I apologize for my slide showing that this is available on April 28th is actually, and I will mention this at the end, the release is not until May 5th, so you will have to wait about a week for it to be released. That was just a typo on my part. I hadn't updated my slides to reflect something. So May 5th will be the release date for the software here. But let's talk about the HR enhancements. Now I've switched to an employee view, somebody who's scheduled, so I can show you this as well as we're going to show a little bit of onboarding changes that we've made here. So as we can see here, oops, let me refresh this. I didn't see my my notes here, a little thrown off there, but the employee self-service enhancements. So we'll talk about our scheduling view. We're talking about onboarding, restricting it so that they can't just mark it as completed without actually going through open enrollment in courses, a change to the company directory, job posting control for hiring managers, and a new report that's available. So these are changes here in self-service. Let's look at these real quick. And that first thing is the employee schedule view. So if you're familiar with this, previously we had 2 things here. One said my availability, and then the other one was my schedule or my shift assignments, I believe. We've consolidated into my schedule. This is also a view that if you had looked in the mobile app is already in our new mobile app. So we've taken that mobile app view and brought it over into our web, our BSS. So here you can see as an example, this may look familiar if you're used to what we used to be called my shift assignments. And I can see my schedule for this week. Here I am, of course, on today with a night class there. As I go forward, things like, if I time off on the day, it has a nice view of this thing. And you'll notice the colors here so I can clearly see this thing and how my scheduling is working in here. And very simple to see this information. So a great view of this. And as I mentioned, this is available in the mobile app, and we'll show that just real quickly when we get to the mobile app. So you'll be able to see that as well. So that's the new schedule view that's in there. Now, I do want to talk about when I go to clock in, how it's going to read my schedule. So when I come back here and I look, I don't remember if this person's East Coast or not. Hopefully they are not, but it'll pull in the data from this general work and task A because that is my schedule. So when I go to start my time, you'll see how it is pre-populated that, because that is my schedule. Now, if I had something else there, it would do that. So it's kind of have to, you have to believe me, this is reading from the schedule. You saw the setting I had to turn that on. So it's reading that. Of course, I could change it if I had a different project or task available to me. I could still override that because I did not do the setting to say don't allow them to override. So she can go in and say, I'm scheduled for task A, but I worked on task C instead. So I'm still able to do that, but that did read the schedule there. Oops, when I went to go clock in. So it read that my schedule was, as you can see there, general work on task A. So that is a nice little enhancement in there to tie the schedule right into the clocking in when I'm got a schedule assigned to me. All right, let's look at the onboarding and the restrictions that are now in there for open enrollment and courses. So what we have out here is somebody who's going through onboarding. She's about halfway through it. She has this training course that she needs to take. Now, I'm not going to go through all the different steps of it, but you'll notice here just a little improvement. I cannot complete this task unless I've actually taken the course. So, today in the older version, people could kind of get around it by marking it as completed. Now, it didn't change the status of the course. It would still be an active course for them in learning, but in onboarding, they could mark it as completed without actually completing it. So now we've resolved that issue. When you hit start here, you go through and you watch the course and do the quizzes and everything, and then you can mark it as completed. The same thing would apply to my open enrollment. So if I go through a new hire enrollment, I have to actually complete it before I can mark it as as completed there. So what it'll do is when I go to submit it, it'll mark it as completed for me. So that is a nice little fix so that your employees can't get around things you need them to do in the onboarding. Another nice little thing out here is in our company directory, we now have the ability to put the department column on here. So if you would like to have that visible to your employees rather than just showing the work location, which could be useful, we're also including the department. You can enable that right here, or you could hide it if you don't need let's say you don't want the status, which was something we added last time, and maybe you don't care about the work location because everybody's at the same location or something. You could turn those things on and off as you need to. To remove those, let me refresh this screen. I clicked on somebody I don't have access to, so it's not showing that, but you'll see how that is there. And of course, if I wanted to sort by this or something, I can sort by the department and so forth to be able to see that information. So a nice little addition to the company directory. And let's look at a couple of things for hiring managers, or I should say management. So I'm going to switch my browser over to somebody who can do hiring management. So let's go back over to Ted here. And he's somebody that I allow them to do job posting and so forth. And we've had a feature within the recruiting for quite a while where you could say how many open positions you had, but in the requisition process, you did not have access to this to be able to actually tell the system what it was. It required the recruiter to go through and enter that in. So we've filled that gap in here. And now during the requisition process, the manager can fill that in. You'll see here, if I create a job posting, I can go ahead and say, I'm looking for 2 of whatever this is for this particular position out here. So I could say I'm looking for a merchandise seller. I need 2 of them, and fill all this information in as I see fit. All right, so you can see that information right there. So a nice little addition, be able to have this in here. Now, this is not a required field because maybe the hiring manager doesn't know how many they need, and the recruiter will still fill it in later. But that is a nice little feature available for our hiring managers out there. All right, and then finally is a new report available called My Team Address Labels. So when I go out to run my reports, there is a new report out here in self-service for My Team Address Label. So you'll see here the criteria or the options for this. So I can say I want to look for everybody who reports to me as a manager. I want to use the mailing address, and go ahead and run this report. All right, and now I got address labels. I don't recall what format this is. Maybe our chat can tell me. I know it's one of those Avery labels, but I don't remember which number it is. But as you can see here, they're nice mailing labels for that. Now, of course, some of these don't have the apartment or whatever, so I've got a little blank there. But ignore the ignore the addresses. These are obviously not real addresses, but you can see how that looks on there. All right, so some fantastic enhancements in the self-service area. We're going to go ahead and put a poll up for that. And while we're doing that, I am going into my mobile app and we'll talk about what's there. And we'll do this. I think it's okay. The poll's ended. All right. So before I go into the mobile app, we'll talk about some of the things that are now available in the mobile app. So, and you can see expense reporting is now available there, access to the benefits and open enrollment, certifications, as well as an improved navigation experience. And I should have put on here the schedule view. It's actually a little bit, it was previously there, but we're kind of including it in this enhancements for scheduling. So it is in there, and I'll show you that here in a moment. So give me 1 second here to show my phone, and just need it to connect. And I'll share my phone here, and you'll be able to see our mobile app. All right, so you should be able to see Ted's mobile app here and what he's going to be able to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into expense reporting and show you how that would work. So here you'll see it's actually under pay. So if you already have this under your recently used, you can just tap right there, or you can come down to the bottom and you go to pay there. So whichever one works best for you. And then here is expense report right there. And of course, I can view all of my existing expense reports going back, as all those I have out there. But if I would like to create a new one, I could do that right here. I can hit the plus and go in and create a new one. Here, I have one already kind of created, so you can see that. Now, actually, let me show one that's not submitted here. So what is the title to this? I could say industry conference. Okay, and maybe I went last weekend. So I'll go ahead and put that there. What was the purpose of this? It's an expense reimbursement. And then I can add my various expenses onto here. So you may know that the categories are something that is configured in the system. These are income codes. You have as many as you like. I have 5. You could have 50 of them. So you'll choose one of these. So let's just say he had a meal and he needs to put that there. So we'll just put down dinner or something like that. And maybe he used his own money for that, or his corporate card. You can choose how that works there. What was the date for this? Let's just say it was on Saturday, and I don't remember how much. Let's just make up a number, and we'll say it cost $30.20. All right, now if I have project and task as something that I need them to fill in, I could have them do that right there. And they could, of course, type in some notes, dinner with John. Okay, and then I can attach right here a file. So when I do this here, I can either go to my files or I can go to my photo gallery, and I can attach one or more attachments. So I snap a picture with my phone and and then attach those receipts if I need to do that right there. And then of course hit the little check mark there. I do want to point out that just like in self-service, if I have a mileage one, I can calculate the distance. So I could say drive to the conference. Okay, and then what is my distance here? You'll notice I can do it in miles or kilometers. So I can just start typing in an address, 805, and let's just say it's this right here. And then they went to 1200 and North Harbor Drive. Okay, and then it's got that right there, 16.62 miles, or I could put it in kilometers if I need to do that. So I have that choice right there. And of course, now it's 16.62, and it calculated the rate. And of course, I would, maybe need to do this. All right. So, and I can add in, oh, I forgot, I paid out of pocket for that. It's my cash reimbursement. And there we go. All right. So everything is there. At this point, I could save by just hitting the check, or I can submit it. So really straightforward, easy to use. And then just like a regular expense report. I could see it in self-service at this point, and whoever is approving those, they would go through and they would approve, hopefully, my expense report. Now, also on this screen is one of our enhancements, which is an improved navigation experience. This bar down here is going to be visible anytime you're not making a change to something. Like you didn't see it there when I was actually doing the expense report, because you don't want to bail out without saving. So that is right there. But this is available anywhere. So if I need to return home or I want to clock in or something like that, I can do that right there. All right, let's talk about the benefits. So there's two things available in benefits. So of course, your benefit plans. Now, he doesn't have any benefits active. I apologize about that, but I can see my old one. So I can hit inactive and I can go into my old 401k and I can see he was doing 5%, and here were his beneficiaries or whatever it was. So I can see that information out there. If this is a plan where they can make a change, I am able to do that here and I'm able to submit that. So let's say this was the current 401k and he wanted to change it from 5 to 10%, he could go ahead and put that information in right there. All right, maybe there's other ones that don't allow change, like medical or dental, and that's how that would work. All right, and then the other thing is open enrollment. I can go through and I could do my open enrollment through here. I apologize, I don't have one. I didn't have the time to go through an entire open enrollment here because we have lots to still cover. But you can go through the entire open enrollment. It's obviously mobile friendly here. Each step is, it steps you right through it, just like it does in self-service. So you can go through open enrollment. So that's now available in the mobile app. And then finally is certifications. So under career, which is also available in the little folder, you'll see certifications, and I can see my existing certifications. These, of course, could have come from a number of sources. Maybe when I was hired, I said, hey, these are the certifications I have. It could have been something that I got some training and I earned that certification, or maybe I went outside of the company and I got some certification. So I want to put that information in here. So I could say, like first aid or something like that and search for this. Let's just say CPR. It was issued by the Red Cross. And, when did I get it? Let's just say I got it back on the 1st. And then, of course, the expiration date may pre-populate depending on the settings for the certification, or maybe there's not one on there at all and I can leave it blank. If I want to upload a copy of that certification, again, I can add an attachment just like I can with an expense report. So I can put that right in there and then submit that. Now, I don't have an approval, so it's automatically approved. But if I did, it would follow the same thing, just like self-service. So certifications are now available out there. And again, the improved navigation down here at the bottom. So those are our enhancements to the mobile app. So we're going to go ahead and put up one more poll about the mobile app before we talk about our recruiting changes. Now, while we are on this this poll here, let me go back. I'm going to bring up my slideshow one more time because I do want to point out the error that I fixed on my slide while you're going through that poll there. And that is the release date is on May 5th. I apologize. I prematurely, our developers probably panicking. May 5th is our release date. So you have to wait a little bit, but it will be available then. And then here we've got QR codes if you'd like to download Criterion HCM too. So if you want to, quickly grab your phone and take a picture of this, you can download it with the appropriate, whether you're on Google or Apple. It's going to be the same one. Now, today, it'll be the slightly older version because those enhancements do require some stuff with the versions coming out on May 5th. So if you download it today, after May 5th, you'll be able to update it to the latest version and have all those things I showed you in there. So go ahead and take a picture of this if you need to. I'll leave it up for a couple more seconds before we switch back over. Okay, to my browser here. All right, so next we're going to cover some changes in recruiting. So you'll see here the cover letter requirement in job postings and improved candidate search, company logos now displaying when somebody's applying, resume and cover letter version management, and language settings to help support Quebec Bill 96, so for our Canadian friends. All right, so that is what's going to go on in recruiting. Let's jump over to recruiting and we'll look at this here. So I already have a tab right here in my recruiting, and you'll see my various open jobs I have out here. Here you'll see I have a job for a ticketing supervisor, and the new setting that is available that I just mentioned is I can make the cover letter required. So you can require that when somebody is applying, they must upload a cover letter, just like they must upload a resume. So this is one that we've had for a while, but this is the new one if you want to enforce a cover letter. So you can make sure that those folks who are applying do have that available or do submit that to you. All right. Now, once you have your candidates, we've enhanced the searching capabilities for the candidates. So previously we just called it name, but now we've broken this down a little bit more and given you more options for searching. So you'll see all these options on the left to look for the appropriate candidate for your positions. So you'll see here if I'm looking for, I'm just going to type in Lola. If I do have one named Lola, she should come up. All right, so there you go. So you can see how I can do that. And of course, I can mix and match these things. I might say I need everybody whose name is John and they have a particular skill or something like that. And they'll work all together for those right there. So that is the improved candidate search that's now going to be available out there for you to look at these things. And you'll see even down to the location, you could, put down like within a distance if you need to. So if they have their address in there, you can actually look for a location within a certain distance if you need to. Back to my jobs into my ticketing supervisor. I'll show you the application page and then we'll talk about the version management. So let's look at this right here. Here is my ticketing supervisor. Now this is the company logo that we're going to talk about here. Now this is, I've decided to put this logo here. That's a setting in my recruiting, but I could have it for a particular company. Maybe I want to put the AFC Richmond logo right here. I could do that. All right. Once I start getting into the job, because this is for the company AFC Richmond, I now have their specific logo. We did add an enhancement several versions ago where you could have different job boards for different companies. So the previous screen could have the AFC Richmond logo here because there might be a different job board for my other company. But now this logo is going to show up on every page as I go through the application. It will have this information up here at the top. And then I'm going to skip over the version management just a second. You'll see the language support right here. So if I need to have it in French or Spanish, I can do that right there. Now, I will mention the things that I'm putting in myself, like the job description or the department name or the position type, anything that is under my control as a administrator, HR user, et cetera, I would need to translate it. We don't translate, let's say, this job description into French. So maybe you want to have, a French job description, and then they scroll down and there's an English job description. So you'll see here when I change it to French, it's not going to change the job description and stuff. It'll change the labels here, but it's not going to change the description because that is not that way. But you'll see how that is all there. And then as they go through and they apply for the position, it will have that on every screen. I can go back to right there. And so this will be available on every screen for them to have it in their language. So as they go through and apply to positions, that's there. And then I do want to point out something that is also in here, and that is if I've applied to a position before, it will remember my information on these various screens. As long as it's the same session, I don't even need to log back in. So if I applied to this ticketing supervisor, and then I go back to my job listing and I apply to the ticket seller, it will remember everything it knows about me that is shared between the two jobs, like my name, my email address, my phone number, my ethnicity, address, anything that I've put in that's kind of common to me is going to be in there. Now, if there's a specific question, let's say for ticketing supervisor, that is not in ticket seller, maybe I ask, what management experience do you have? And then it's not a question on the other one. It's not going to show up on the other one. It's specific to that position, but those common fields will be pre-populated with my information without even having to log in. Now, if I leave and I come back, several hours later or a couple of days later or whatever, you can use prior entered data, and this will search by the email address. This isn't anything new, but that's how you can have it remember who you are if you have been here before, or the person has been here before. All right, now finally, let's talk about the version control over the resume and the cover letter. So here you can see Deborah, she applied to this position of a ticketing supervisor, and she could have multiple resumes. Maybe she has multiple resumes because she's got different jobs she's applied to, and she wants to, have different ones for different jobs. And maybe she uploaded the wrong one. If you're required to keep, say, all resumes that are sent to you, this will allow you to see the different versions that she has sent to you. So I would see all the different ones. You'll notice how what it's done is we took the file name. Now you'll have to kind of trust me here, but the file name was resume Deborah West ticketing supervisor, and then we added to it the date and time. So that's what we do when it's uploaded. You can change it if you want to rename it. You're certainly welcome to do that. But that's what we're doing to it if you want to see that. But you'll be able to use this to find and see those different ones that are out there. And then the same thing will happen with the cover letter. So here's her cover letter. And again, I called it cover letter, Deborah West ticketing supervisor, and then it added the date and time to it. So that's how that's there. And if she had multiple versions, I would be able to see those out there. So that is what's there. And this cover letter was required, so that's why it's here. You may have noticed when I went to apply, I didn't really talk about that, but this is a requirement because I made it a requirement. I have to upload those right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and put up one more poll. We'll have one more after this, but about recruiting, and we can see your temperature on those great enhancements in recruiting. And while we are conducting this poll, I do want to thank everybody who has submitted customer feature requests. That is where we get a lot of these enhancements is from you. You need something, you would like to see something in the system that is not there now. As a administrator, you can go in right here and you can suggest a new idea. So if you've got a great idea for recruiting, for the mobile app, for scheduling, you can come out here, click this button, and you can make your suggestion for what you think we should be doing, going forward. And you'll see there's suggestions out here from lots of different people. I'm not calling anybody out, but you'll see all these different people are suggesting things. And we do take these seriously. You may have seen things in here that you suggested. And we do add, quite a few every release from this list. You'll see here that they're voted on. So let's say this manager emails. I'm not sure what this is. If I thought this was a great idea, I can upvote this. All right. So please feel free to do this. Obviously, everybody's got a limited amount of time. We are not expecting you to be out here suggesting things daily. But if you have a good idea and you say, wow, we really wish we could do this in the system, use that feature request portal, and you'd be surprised. We go through there and you might see those things updated in our next release or maybe 6 months from now. But we do take that very seriously. Our support team goes through that on a regular basis, and we pull out those ideas that you come up with. All right, enough of that spiel there. Let's look at our last section here, but there's quite a bit in human resources. So our company policy generation, we've enhanced the AI abilities within there. I'll show you that in a moment. A notes section in the life events, pretty simple little field on there. The advanced search, being able to share your advanced search with others if you want to do that. Report categories in the data grid. Password expirations and a user PIN policy. And you'll see actually, here's the password expiration. If you don't want that, you can turn that off now, but that's up there. New hire workflow now supports rejection handling. So if you are using new hire workflows, what do we do if the person gets rejected because you've put them in the system as an employee? How do we handle that? For our mobile friends, people using mobile, this is not just to the mobile app, but the mobile web browser too. A better web form for them, and I'll talk about how you set that up. And then, like I said, last but certainly not least, this is a great big enhancement, is the compensation distribution, being able to use comp ratio and location differentials. I'm definitely going to get to that. I saved it for last because I want to tease people to stick around, because this is great. So please stick around if you can. to see this last enhancement right there. But let's first look at policy generations here. So you may be aware that you can create company policies out there for your employees to sign off on. That is available under your general settings right here. This is something that we added a couple of releases back. And we've made an enhancement to the AI generation. So it's even better than before. So you'll see here, I can come in, put in my policy. Now, this is not really all that new, but I can use our chai here. So I might say this is going to be my social media policy as an example. And social media policy directs employees to watch out for what they post online, like that. So of course you could have a very long description. What we're going to do is you're going to take the name and the description as the context that we'll use for our generation here. If you're familiar with something like ChatGPT or Gemini, whenever you do like a prompt and you say, please do this, that's the context. So that's basically what we're doing. And here we will now generate that policy. So you'll see that generate here in a moment. It's got to go through and figure out what to say here, and it'll populate into this box. So here you go. So there's a social media policy out there. And, you know, you can now review this. Of course, you can edit this. Maybe you want to take it even out into Word, copy and paste it into Word and, you know, make some changes or whatever. You'll see that because we use, you know, artificial intelligence here, it added this. That's not necessary because we have that signature right in our system there. I'll go ahead and show you what this looks like. I'll just say it's going to be active starting, you know what, I'll put it Monday. And I'm going to have all my active employees need to do this. And I'm going to actually publish it right away. Now I could save a draft because maybe I want somebody else to review it and, you know, give me their feedback, but I'm going to publish it. And if you haven't seen this before, what happens is when I go back out to my self-service, I will have a new policy to sign because that's my new company policy. So you'll see right here, I got a notification. There's a new company policy to sign, and then I'll go ahead and view this. And here I can read my policy. We do have version control. So if you go through and maybe you want to make some tweaks to this and, you know, mention that, you know, please don't mention the company name if you're, you know, talking, you know, on TikTok or whatever. So, you know, you can put whatever you like in there and then it will say, oh, this is version 2. And people would have to go and, you know, re-sign it. But here you can see I can sign this, or I believe I have a saved signature. There's Ted's signature and I can sign that. And now it's signed. If I need to download this, I can, you know, go back in there and see that if I need to. So that's the company policies and the enhancements to the generation of that. All right, so life events, what we've done in life events is we've now added a notes column here that you can put in here. So, you know, let's say I had birth of a child. Okay, and I don't remember, let's just say it was on Monday. A lot of stuff's happening on Monday. Let's just say it was a couple of weeks ago. All right, and yes, I don't have birth. I was looking for birth of a child. I don't have one in here. So I'm not sure why I don't have birth of a child. Let's just say marriage. All right, and then I'll add in this. So obviously I can now add a new one, or I can select an existing one. Let me just select Derek here. He's my new son, even though I don't have that event type. Now the event type is something there's a code table for that. I don't know why I don't have birth of a child in here, but it's not. You can set that up in your code tables. But here's now a note that I might want to say, forgot to add Derek into the system, so I can add him to our benefits. All right, and then I can submit that there. So that new note field is available, and you can see the column here. Now, the note field was there before, but this was not here, so you couldn't see that, and you'd have to click into it. So we just kind of made it a little bit easier to see that right there. All right, it's also visible on the employee record. If I go to HR, and let me kind of clean some of this stuff up here. If I go to HR and I go to an employee, I'll be able to see that note field over there for the life event. Let's talk about, in fact, I shouldn't have gone through, is the advanced filters here. So you may be aware that you can create filters to do a lot more than just these few filters over here. You can go out there and save them or create new ones. Let's say I want to find everybody who's been hired since the beginning of last year. So I can go out here to, let's say, the employee table, and I'll use the hire date, and I'm going to say is greater than or equal to, and I'll just type in 1/1/24. All right. I could add other conditions. I could say, and they're still active, or their job title is customer service or something like this. And you'll see here, let's go ahead and save this. All right. So I'm going to call this hired since January 24. And before you just save, and that was your search, and great, you could use it over and over again. But now I can make it a public search so that other admin users can use my same advanced search if they need to do that. So it's available for me, but then other people, when they come in here, they will see it and it will say shared. So they can use those same ones if they want to share them. And then if they like it and maybe they want to save their own version of it, they add some other conditions in here, they can save their own version and have that still be private, or they can choose to share it. All right. And then, of course, I'll hit apply here, and I have 3 folks that have been hired in the last 18 months or so. All right, so that is the ability to now share that. And of course, I can clear that out if I need to clear that out. Let's look at data grids and a new ability to be able to categorize your data grids as you create them. And you can see I have a category here for this employee salary list. Maybe I want to do one for this active employee list. So when I go in and I create one, or if I edit an existing one, I will have this right here. So this will be available when you go to save. You'll be able to categorize how you want them to be here. Now you can go to the code table and you can add them in there, or you can do that right from here. This is, if you ever see that blue gear, that means you can add a code right here. So maybe I just want to categorize this as employees. So here's that one called pay rate, and I'm just going to call this employees. All right, so of course I could do it in different languages if I needed to. I can make it my default if I want to. And I added that new code. I could have gone to the code table if I wanted to do that, but there's employees. And now I can select employees from here. And now when I save, it'll now be categorized as an employees report. So of course, now I could group this or sort them as I need to. So the idea is that makes it easier to now find different ones. You might want to group these up. You've got payroll, you've got recruiting, or whatever you want to do there. You can categorize them, and then you can do things like sorting and grouping, so you could find those a little bit easier in the data grid. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the password expiration notification, as well as the user PIN policy. So you saw in self-service, I had a notice that my password was going to be expiring. And here's my policy. It expires in 90 days. And here's now a setting. If I do not want this banner message to show that it expires in 5 days. All right. So if I don't want that for whatever reason, I could turn that off or turn it on. Very simple like that. All right. And then right down here, a user PIN policy. So you may be aware that the last 6 digits of the social or the SIN is our PIN when somebody goes to change their password or reset their password. But now you have other formats you can use as well. So you'll see like date of birth, day, month, year, month, day, year. I could do social or date of birth. And you'll see that if I, because date of birth has 2 different formats, social, date of birth as day, month, year, or month, day, year. So you can do those right there. Of course, if the date of birth is blank, and that's not really going to work, but Social Security, you can make either one of these fields required so that they have to do that in there. So let's say I make it this one here. When I go to reset my password, either answer would be used to change my password. So a nice little thing in there. So that way, maybe people don't like their social being the PIN. You can say, well, it's not your social, it's your birthday. And, that's an option out there. The default will still be social or SIN or national ID, whatever you refer to it, the last 6 digits of that. Okay. So the next one is, I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. There is a workflow that you can set up called new hire. So let me just see if I have one out here. I do. Okay. So previously, what could happen is the person could get into limbo if they were rejected out here. in the process. So what we've done now is that they're not in limbo. They're not, kind of this weird, like they're kind of an employee, but not, in that you can like resubmit and fix whatever the problem is. So when I initiate it and I go fill in all the information about my new hire, maybe the manager looks at it and says, you know what, we said we were going to pay this person $30 an hour. You have it as 28. Let's go ahead and fix that. So they can put that as the note there and say the pay rate should be 30. And then the initiator can go back and fix that and resubmit it rather than them being in limbo and you can't really do anything with it. Or if you rejected it and maybe you rejected it because the person never showed up and now they're still there as an employee, but not really active or anything like that. So you can now take care of those situations. So we've kind of enhanced that in there and made it a little, it's one of these things that's conceptual. I don't want to hire somebody and kind of show you because it takes a while. I don't have time, but that's what we've made an improvement in there. We want to thank our clients who reached out and said, we've got some folks in limbo. How do we handle them? We've corrected that. All right, two more things, two big things. One is on our forms. So if you're familiar with the form builder, this is going to be great out here. And that is a mobile view of the forms where you can configure that mobile view. So when you're going through and building a form, and you can see what this looks like, this looks great. If I was on the web, I can preview it and, it's going to look like this. Now, maybe this isn't the best looking form of all time, but you can see what it looks like. But for mobile, the problem is, of course, it's a smaller screen and might be harder to read, or maybe you have two columns or things like that. And you want to make it easier for your folks who are filling out on mobile. So we've done that. And when you go to fill out a form on mobile in our mobile app or however they're going to do that, now what you can do is you can go through and mark that a field is visible on mobile because maybe it's not. Maybe you have like a logo and you don't want it visible on mobile. You could turn that off, or maybe there's something else you don't want to have on there. But you could check this box right here and then label it. This would be the label for that field on mobile. You'll see that here in a moment. So you can go through each field, and I've done that. I've checked off that it's visible on mobile, and you'll see that there. Now, if you have a form and no fields are currently set to visible on mobile, you will not see this mobile editor button. But as soon as you have one, this mobile editor button is available, and it will show you all of the fields that you have configured on your form. Now, I have not put a label on all of them. I put a label on the first three, so let me show you here. Here's the label. I'll call it gender. And now you'll see gender. So if you're not seeing a label, it's because that field is not labeled. You'd have to go through and label them all. I'm not going to spend all the time to do that, but you can see how that works there. And then if I want to rearrange them, I can move them up and down as necessary. Now, what we do is we kind of look at where they are on the form. Mine all happen to be, one column, but if you had several columns like side by side, you could tell the system, okay, I want the middle name, and then I want the social, then I want the birth date. And that's how it's going to show up on mobile when somebody goes to fill out the form. What they'll see is a similar view to this. They'll, of course, say the name of the form, but then they'll see the fields like this, and then they'll have the option to view the form with all their data filled in. So they'll see the whole form view laid out like this with all of their information filled in, so they don't have to see it laid out like that. So it's really great if you've got a form that's maybe got a bunch of formatting, and on mobile it was hard to see. This will help you out with that mobile editor right there. Okay, last but not least, and I have about 5 minutes to explain this, is our enhancements around the compensation distribution. And there's a lot in here, and I left it to the end because I was hoping people would stick around. So this is our compensation distribution or compensation management. So previously we had default merit scales where we could look at the performance review score and put down the different recommendations that you might have for whatever the score is. So from 0 to 50, you're recommending 2%, and you'll see the other ones here. So that way, tied into the performance review, somebody gets an 89% on their performance review, the system will recommend a 10% increase because that's what's in that range there. But now we've added the comp ratio as something you can use as well. So you'll see this one is great because it has both the performance review score and the comp ratio. And you could just use comp ratio if you'd like. You can just use performance review, or you can use both. And then if I do both, you'll see here, I can say, all right, if the compa ratio is between 0 and 90%, and the performance review is, that's a really good one. I don't know why I've got 500 there. Let me do 0. All right, I can put in, actually, let me be realistic there. 5%, not 500%. So 5%, so 0. And then if it's between 90 and 100, 3%, 110, so it's above the median, 2.5%, and 110 to 200 is 2%. And so you could build out your grid to say, look at the performance review score, look at the comp ratio, and put out the various recommended increases in your merit. Now, the other thing is you may notice a checkbox here for location differential. So if you're a company that is in multiple cities, multiple states, and the cost of living is different in those cities and states, you can build out location differentials. And here you'll see as an example, I might say in Richmond, there's no differential. We've kind of set our pay rates around everybody in Richmond, but we know the cost of living is higher in Connecticut and even higher in Pennsylvania. So when we're calculating comp ratio, let's increase it by 2% to reflect the local cost of living and 2.5% for Pennsylvania. And let me show you here, I can select one or more work locations. So if I've got several cities in a state or something like that, I could say, okay, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Morristown or something like that, and they're all Pennsylvania. So if I want to group them together that way, I could, or I could have one for each individual work location. The description, is what you saw right there, and then here's the differential for that. All right, so you could build that in and use that with your scale here. So the comp ratio calculation, it would increase it, or it would recalculate it based off of that differential, and maybe it bumps them down to a lower comp ratio because there's a higher cost of living in that area. So that's how that all ties together there. Now on the distribution round, there's also a number of enhancements here. So one is being able to choose how you show the pay rate in the distribution round. Previously, you could say, I want to see the monthly rate, the annual rate, but we've added the hourly rate because we know a lot of times there are hourly folks in there and we want to see what that hourly rate is there. You can also see the half year if you want to see that, or quarterly rate, but you have that option right there. I'm going to set it as year. And I'm just going to go through here real quick and set one up. If you've never seen this before, what's the start date for this? Let's just say it started in April. It's going to go till June, and it's going to be effective in July. All right. So those are the settings right there. Here's the guideline for this here. So this is where there's, again, some more options in here. I'm going to just put down 500,000. All right. Here is the increase scale. So I'll use that performance and comp ratio one. And I'm not going to do any bonuses here, so I'm going to just leave that as 0. And here we have a lot more options for what shows in the grid. So you'll notice here now, maybe I chose hourly rates in the setup and I want to show annual, or vice versa. I'm showing annual rate, but I'd like them to also see the hourly rate. I could choose that. Maybe I want to see what their future pay rate is after I set up, my thing, and I say, oh, he's going to get a 10% increase. Well, what does that mean? Now I can see that on there. There's the future comp ratio. Where will they be after we put in that change? Perhaps I want to see the location differential. So remember that we just set up there. Maybe I want to see what the median is for this particular position. Now, some of these things, of course, require us to have that salary grade set up. If we don't, we can't calculate the comp ratio because that's based off a salary grade. But I can add these various columns in here. Maybe I want to show the comp ratio. Now, if I have that location differential turned on, it'll show that in the comp ratio. It'll already be in there. All right, so I can do that here. I want the performance review results. Once I select that, I do need to tell it which review period I'm using. I'll just use this one. And let's go forward here. This is another new enhancement on the next screen. When I select my employees, instead of being all of the employees for a manager, now you can choose which employees you want for that manager. I'm just going to say they're going to get 10% here. Okay, and you'll notice how the bonus is not here. So we hide the bonus column if you don't actually have a bonus, and we could hide the merit column if there's no merit increase. So if you want to just use it for bonuses or just use it for merit, you can do that. And here's where we add the employees. This is the new step. So I can choose, kind of like a performance review, I could choose to add all the employees for the managers that I've selected, or I can add individual employees if I want to. If I choose to add all, I could still choose to remove some if I need to. So maybe Vince isn't going to be included or something like that. I could do that. Or if I want to select people, I could do that. He has only got 2, so very simple there, but I can also use groups. All right, and let me go ahead and submit that there, and let's go back out to here. I should be able to see my distribution round. Now, I don't believe I have performance reviews for my folks. Oh, I got to, you know what? Hang on. I need to publish it. This might be one more. Hang on 1 second. I should be able to. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I chose Chris instead of the right manager there. So let me log in as Chris real quick, and I'll see that. I thought I chose Ted there, so let me choose Chris. And he will have the distribution round. Here we go. Here's Chris. And this is our enhanced view of the distribution round. You'll see the various columns that are there. Let me make this bigger. Because I chose a lot of columns, of course, you know, I need to make it bigger, and I have a scroll bar here. I can turn things off if I need to. So, you know, let's say I didn't do performance review and I want to turn off the column. I can add and remove columns if I need to, but you'll notice here, like there's the comp ratio. He's at 78%. And, you know, here's how that's working there. There's the median for that position. The ones that have nothing, they don't have a salary grade, so it can't calculate anything. Unfortunately, the 2 I chose who have a salary grade don't have a location differential, but I would see one if there was, and it would calculate the comp ratio based off of that. And then if I put in an increase here, it will allow me to see the future rates and stuff like that, so I can put those in. You'll notice how the bonus columns aren't here because I didn't have bonuses on that. So you'll see that right there. So I know we went into overtime, and I do appreciate people staying around for this to see all this enhancement here. And I wanted to keep this one at the end to kind of show you this right here, the enhancements to compensation management. So thank you so much. We're going to put up one more poll before we end our webinar here. And I do want to thank everybody who submitted CFRs and ideas for the system there. We really do take that seriously, and you see the results of these things and getting it added into the system. I also want to thank our development team. They did a fantastic job doing all these things. We asked a lot of them, and they delivered. They really did a great job. So thank you, team, for that. Let's one more time share the QR codes for the mobile app. So if you haven't had a chance to get those, I'm going to keep it up for a few more seconds here. And then finally, we're going to talk about our Criterion Learning Series webinars. So you saw the enhancements to scheduling. I flew through it very quickly because of the time. We have more time in 2 weeks. So on the 8th, after it's released on the 5th, you'll be able to actually get your hands on it and look at the scheduling if you want to. But on the 8th, we're going to go into more detail on the scheduling. So if you're thinking about it, maybe you're on the fence and you like what you've seen so far, we're going to go into that. I will say we have even more on our roadmap for scheduling coming up. I'm not going to, you know, tease anything, but there's even more enhancements coming up out there that'll be in our next release. That's going to be our pre-release. So, you know, please look forward to that. And then we're going to talk about income code setup. That's something that we haven't covered in a couple of years, and just want to cover that again for anybody who maybe needs a refresher on how to set up income codes. Talk about employee engagement and how that works. You saw I had my list of the items in there. Some people, you know, haven't seen how you do that, or they need a refresher and see how the new enhancements to that, not that new, but they are newer since the last time we talked about it a couple of years ago. And then deductions at the end of June. So that's getting us through the rest of this quarter. And those are our Criterion Learning Series webinars. So we hope to see you there. And we hope that you all enjoy the updates when they're available for you on May 5th. And thank you again for joining us today. Have a nice day.